Have you ever wondered why some people succeed and others, people who seem just as intelligent, just as gifted, just as full of promise, simply don't? It's one of life's most frustrating and universal questions. We see it everywhere. We see it in the brilliant high school valedictorian who flames out in their first year of college. We see it in the prodigiously talented musician who gives up just before their big break, or the promising entrepreneur whose startup folds while a less flashy competitor goes on to change the world. We are raised on a mythology of talent. This idea that some people are just born with a special spark, an innate genius that preordains them for greatness. And yet, the reality we witness with our own eyes constantly contradicts this simple story. It suggests that the raw material of ability is not, in fact, the final determinant of our destiny. This gap, this chasm between potential and actual achievement, is a place where a lot of us live. It's a source of deep personal anxiety, a quiet fear that maybe we don't have what it takes. We ask ourselves, what is this invisible ingredient? What is the one quality that allows someone to take their God-given or hard-won abilities and actually turn them into something real, something lasting? One person became so obsessed with this question that she dedicated her entire life to answering it. Her name is Angela Duckworth, and her journey began not in a sterile laboratory, but in confusing, messy, and often heartbreaking realities of the real world. This is the story of her quest to solve the puzzle of high achievement, and what she discovered is a truth so profound it has the power to change not just how we see success, but how we see ourselves. Angela Duckworth's quest began with a single, persistent voice in her head. Her father's. Growing up, he would often tell her, "You know, you're no genius." It wasn't meant to be cruel, not exactly. In his mind, it was a simple statement of fact, a kind of loving reality check. He was a scientist, a man who believed in innate intellect, and he had simply assessed his daughter and found her wanting in that specific department. This early label, this constant reminder of her supposed limitations, didn't crush her. Instead, it planted a seed of defiant curiosity. If she wasn't a genius, then what accounted for the successes she did manage to achieve? And what about others? She saw this paradox play out on a grand scale when she landed a job at the prestigious consulting firm McKinsey & Company. She was surrounded, for the first time, by people who were officially designated geniuses. They had perfect resumes, degrees from the most elite universities, and intellects that could cut through complex business problems like a hot knife through butter. They were, by every conventional measure, the most talented people on the planet. And yet, even in this rarefied atmosphere of pure brain power, the old, nagging question remained. Raw intelligence wasn't a perfect predictor of who would thrive. Some of these brilliant minds struggled with the grind, the long hours, and the ambiguous challenges of the work. Others, who were perhaps not the quickest wits in the room, excelled through sheer tenacity. The mythology of talent was beginning to fray at the edges, but it was her next career move that would rip it to shreds. She made a decision that baffled her colleagues. She left the world of high-powered consulting to become a 7th-grade math teacher in a public school on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And it was there in that classroom that her abstract question became an urgent, daily, and deeply personal struggle. In her classroom, the puzzle of achievement was no longer a corporate curiosity. It was written on the faces of her students. She saw kids who were what she called naturals. They had a fluency with numbers, an intuitive grasp of concepts that she, even with her advanced degree, had to work hard to explain. They were the ones who would get it instantly, their hands shooting up, while others were still puzzling over the first step of a problem. According to the gospel of talent, these students should have been her star pupils. They should have been acing every test and soaring to the top of the class. But often they weren't. Their report cards would come back with B's or even C's. They would coast on their natural ability, but when a concept required sustained effort or when they encountered a problem that didn't immediately yield to their intellect, they would stall. They would become frustrated and disengage. And then there was the other group, the students who struggled, the ones for whom math did not come easy. They would frown in concentration, ask questions that seemed basic, and fill pages of their notebooks with messy, crossed-out attempts to solve a single problem. They lacked the effortless grace of the naturals. But something remarkable would happen over the course of the semester. These grinders, these strivers, would slowly but surely begin to pull ahead. Their effort, relentless and unglamorous, was compounding. They would stay for extra help. They would do more practice problems than were assigned, and they would wrestle with a concept for days until it finally clicked. By the end of the year, these were often the students with the highest grades. They had outperformed their more gifted peers through something else entirely. This wasn't a rare occurrence. It was a consistent pattern. And for Duckworth, it was a revelation. It was profoundly clear that what we are capable of on any given day is not what determines our ultimate success. The disconnect between her students' IQ scores and their final grades was an indictment of the way we think about achievement. She realized that she could not answer her burning question as a teacher. She needed new tools. She needed to become a scientist. So she left the classroom and enrolled in a PhD program for psychology, determined to isolate and measure this mysterious quality, this X factor that was so much more powerful than talent alone. Her first major investigation took her to one of the most demanding and selective environments imaginable, the United States Military Academy at West Point. If ever there was a place designed to screen for talent and potential, this was it. The admissions process is famously rigorous, evaluating candidates on a whole candidate score that includes everything from SAT scores and high school class rank to a formal physical fitness assessment and a measure of leadership potential. The cadets who are admitted are, by definition, the best of the best, academically gifted, physically capable, and proven leaders. Yet, despite this incredibly thorough vetting process, the institution faced a persistent and costly problem: attrition. Roughly 1 in 5 cadets who entered West Point would drop out before graduation. And the most brutal culling happened right at the beginning, during a punishing 7-week summer training program known officially as Cadet Basic Training, but known to all who endure it simply as Beast Barracks. Beast is a systematic, relentless assault on the body, mind, and spirit, designed to strip away civilian habits and forge soldiers. The question that plagued the West Point leadership was the same one that had haunted Angela Duckworth in her classroom. Why? Why did these elite hand-picked individuals who had fought so hard to get in end up quitting? And more importantly, who was most likely to quit? The military had mountains of data on every cadet, but nothing could reliably predict who would make it through Beast. The valedictorians, the star quarterbacks, the student body presidents, they were just as likely to drop out as anyone else. Talent, in all its measurable forms, was failing as a predictor. This was the perfect laboratory for Duckworth. She and her team administered a battery of questionnaires to over 1,200 new cadets as they began their journey. And tucked among the standard personality assessments was a short, simple survey she had created. It was called the Grit Scale. It didn't ask about your grades, your athletic ability, or your leadership experience. Instead, it asked you to rate yourself on statements like, "I have overcome setbacks to conquer an important challenge. New ideas and projects sometimes distract me from previous ones. And I finish whatever I begin." It was, in essence, a measure of stamina. It gauged your tendency to stick with your commitments, to apply sustained effort toward a goal over a very long time. When the dust of Beast Barracks settled 7 weeks later, Duckworth analyzed the data. The results were stunning. The single best predictor which cadets had made it through that grueling summer was not their SAT score, not their high school rank, not their physical fitness test, and not their leadership potential score. It was their score on that simple grit scale. It was a measure of perseverance. This was the first half of the answer. It suggested that in the face of intense, prolonged challenge, the ability to simply keep going, to put one foot in front of the other day after a miserable day, was more important than any of the abilities you started with. But this discovery, as powerful as it was, felt incomplete. It created a rather grim picture of success. Is that all it is? A joyless, miserable grind? A matter of white-knuckling your way through life, stubbornly refusing to quit long after the passion has died? That didn't seem right. Mere persistence, for persistence's sake, doesn't explain the fire that drives the world's highest achievers. Just telling someone to be more persistent is useless advice if they have no compelling reason to do so. It's like demanding a ship sail faster without giving a rudder or a destination. There had to be another element, something that made the perseverance meaningful, something that directed all that effort. This led Duckworth to a completely different arena of high performance, the Scripps National Spelling Bee. Here were children who had dedicated thousands of hours to a seemingly esoteric pursuit, memorizing the spellings of obscure words. The level of focus and dedication was astounding. When she studied these elite young spellers, she found, predictably, that the grittier kids performed better. They practiced longer and harder. But as she dug deeper, she uncovered a more nuanced truth. It wasn't just the quantity of their practice that set the best apart. It was the quality and, more importantly, the motivation behind it. The spellers who made it the furthest weren't just mindlessly drilling words from a list. They engage in what is known as deliberate practice, constantly identifying their weaknesses, seeking feedback, and pushing themselves just beyond their current capabilities. And the fuel for this demanding type of practice wasn't brute force discipline alone. It was a genuine fascination with the subject. The grittiest competitors loved words. They were curious about their origins, their etymology, their history. The practice didn't feel like a chore. It felt like an exploration. This was the second piece of the puzzle. It wasn't just perseverance. It was passion. But Duckworth's definition of passion is crucial here. It is not the fleeting, intense, fireworks in the sky feeling of falling in love with a new hobby. It is something far quieter, deeper, and more enduring. It is a profound and lasting commitment to a single, top-level goal. She explains this with the concept of a goal hierarchy. At the very top of this hierarchy is your ultimate concern, your life's purpose, the thing that provides direction and meaning to everything else you do. For the speller, it's to become the national champion. For a scientist, it might be to understand the origins of the universe. This top-level goal is abstract and incredibly long-term. Below that are mid-level goals that serve the ultimate goal, and below that are low-level goals, the concrete, daily tasks, and to-do lists. The grittiest people have a tightly organized and coherent goal hierarchy. Their daily grind, the tedious, frustrating, and difficult work, is never just work. It is a necessary step on the path toward their ultimate passion. Their effort has a purpose. People who lack grit, by contrast, often have a messy or non-existent hierarchy. Their effort is scattered across a dozen unrelated pursuits, or they only focus on a low-level task without any connection to a larger why. This was a deeper truth. Perseverance without passion is just drudgery. It's directionless effort that eventually burns out. Passion is the compass that gives all that hard work a point. This is where the two halves of her research click together into a single, elegant, and powerful whole. The grand synthesis, the unifying aha moment, was realizing that grit isn't two separate qualities that you happen to possess. It is not perseverance plus passion. It is one unified concept where the two are inextricably intertwined, a virtuous cycle that feeds on itself. Grit is passion and perseverance applied to long-term goals. One without the other is inert. Passion is a compass that points you toward your own personal true north, your ultimate concern. It's the deep, intrinsic interest that makes you want to get up in the morning and engage with a particular domain. Perseverance is the engine, the discipline, the stamina that allows you to actually make the journey, to move forward day after day, especially on the days you don't feel like it. A powerful engine with no compass will only drive you in circles, burning fuel and getting nowhere. A perfect compass with no engine will leave you stranded, forever dreaming of the destination, but never taking a step. But when you combine them, they create a kind of flywheel. Your passion for a long-term goal makes you want to work hard and overcome obstacles. As you persevere, you get better. You achieve small wins. This progress, this growing sense of mastery, deepens your interest and reinforces your passion. The perseverance fuels the passion, and the passion fuels the perseverance. Each turn of the wheel makes the next turn easier. This unified theory of grit fundamentally reshapes our understanding of talent and effort. Duckworth offers two simple but profound equations to illustrate this. The first is talent multiplied by effort equals skill. Your innate talent for something, say drawing or playing the piano, is just a starting point. It determines how quickly you can improve with practice. But it's the effort, the hours of deliberate practice, That actually builds a skill. The second equation is even more important. Skill multiplied by effort equals achievement. Once you have built a skill, you have to use it. You have to show up and apply that skill again and again to produce something of value. Effort, you'll notice, appears in both equations. It is the magic variable that counts twice. It first transforms your raw talent into usable skill, and then it takes that skill and makes it productive, turning it into tangible achievement. This is why grit, that combination of directed effort over the long haul, is a better predictor of success than talent. Talent is your potential. Grit is what you do with it. So what does this mean for us? We have followed this journey from a father's casual remark, through the classrooms of New York, to the grueling grounds of West Point and the intellectual arena of the National Spelling Bee. We have seen how the puzzle of achievement was solved, not by celebrating innate genius, but by identifying the dual forces of passion and perseverance. The ultimate conclusion of this quest is perhaps the most hopeful of all. Grit is not a fixed trait you are born with. It is a quality that can be learned, cultivated, and grown. Duckworth outlines 4 psychological assets that gritty people share and which we can all develop. It begins with interest. You can't be gritty about something you hate. Passion begins with a spark of genuine fascination. The next is practice. Not just any practice, but the deliberate, focused, and challenging work of trying to get better. This builds the skill and the resilience needed for the long road. The third is purpose. The conviction that your work matters, that it is connected to the well-being of others. Purpose is what reframes the daily grind into a noble calling. And finally, there is hope, not a passive, fingers crossed kind of wishing, but the active belief that our own efforts can improve our future. It's the resolve to get back up after we get knocked down again and again. This isn't just a theory of success. It's a blueprint for a more meaningful life. It tells us that our obsessions and our curiosities are not distractions. They are the raw material of our passion. It tells us that struggle is not a sign of weakness. It is the price of admission for any worthy achievement. And it tells us that the story we tell ourselves about our own abilities matters profoundly. The label of no genius does not have to be a life sentence. It can be a starting point, a reason to dig deeper and rely on something more durable, something we can actually control. The path to our most cherished goals is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And what Angela Duckworth's work gives us is not a shortcut, but something far more valuable, a map and a compass for that long journey. It's an invitation to stop waiting to be discovered for our talent and to start building our future with our grit. The choice to live this way, to commit to our own long-term journey of growth, is a daily one. If this story resonated with you, if you feel ready to start your own marathon, then join a community of people committed to that same path by subscribing. It's more than a click. It's a commitment to yourself. Because in the end, our lives are not defined by the gifts we were given, but by what we choose to do with them.